All right, everybody. Harry Brailsford here from SMB Nation. The times are changing, but we're all here. We're online. It all makes sense. So let's get going. Let's keep it positive, and that's not hard to do. I'm with Tom, and we're talking smart documentation. And Tom, maybe more than ever, there's an opportunity for people to revisit best practices. Yeah, it's we navigate through things that quite frankly, not all of us, we haven't had to navigate through before. So Tom, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. Folks, as you know, with our webinar series to the community members, please use the questions feature over in your dashboard so we can ask the questions and for you and get the answers. With that said, you'll get a thank you follow-up email from Jenny tomorrow with some resources and a couple upcoming webinars. As always, we like to keep you posted on what's going on. And Tom, sir, question. I know your company, IT Glue, is traditionally based out of Canada. Are you across the border, my friend, today?
Yes, I am in Vancouver, British Columbia. Beautiful sunny day. It's a little quiet on the streets, but we are up. I've got the forest in my backyard.
Okay, great. Well, you'll like this. I just had a call an hour ago with Microsoft Canada over in Toronto, and so it's Canada Day, my friend. I'm glad we're all interconnected. Tom, let me hand off to you if you don't mind. Maybe if you want to take the talking stick, introduce yourself, and let's get into. I love business speak. Let's do it.
Sounds good, Harry. Thanks so much for the intro. Appreciate it, and welcome everybody. It's good to have you with us today from wherever and whatever location you are. I suppose in these times, the one thing we know as IT professionals, we are kind of used to dealing with the unknown. That's kind of one of the reasons why we got into it in the first place. So I'm hoping that this season is successful for all of us. Appreciate that some of you may be watching this in some point in the future. If you're wondering what on earth we're talking about, go and have a quick look at some news reports from March the 17th till March the 18th, 2020, and you'll see what we're talking about. But we're in interesting times, but we'd love to just talk a little bit about the MSP world and the world of IT support this morning. So title, Improving Business Process Through Smart Documentation is where we're going. My name is Tom. I'm the Director of Partner Success at IT Glue. And I'm sure you've heard a little bit about IT Glue before jumping on. If not, please go to itglue.com and watch some videos and see what's going on with us. But we are in the documentation space, in the process space for IT service providers. And I've been with IT Glue since we began. Kind of 2013, 2014, we spun up the company, looking at really a key part of the tech stack of a managed service provider. And what we can do to increase efficiency and increase productivity in an organization. So I've also been in IT as a sysadmin, sort of on and off since 1998. So seen an awful lot of change in the IT space and always had that kind of passion for process and documentation, which is why I'm kind of talking to you on one of my favorite topics this morning. I hope you just saw a little intro video there about GlueX. This is our conference coming up later this year. Harry, you going to come and join us there?
I will. I've been to each of them. So you're back in Phoenix. I understand you may be at a different hotel venue, and this is in the fall. So folks, plenty of time to make good decisions. You're in a new venue, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we outgrew the Phoenician, so we're going a little bit bigger this year, and so we needed to find new digs. But Phoenix has worked really well for us. It's a good place to get to. We're pretty confident at this point. Obviously, it's week by week. We're pretty confident by September we'll be in good shape for that, and you can fly in from wherever you are. Yeah, so please get in there on the last couple of days of the early bird special at $399 right now. Prices will go up after March 31st, so recommend you talk to your sales rep about that as you can. As you see, we've got Guy Kawasaki coming in, which is going to be awesome. He's going to put down his surfboard for a couple of days and come and join us in the desert. Probably needs no introduction to you. Just at this point, we've also got a couple of pre-days that are still available to book. So things like watching the Huntress guys do some live hacking on screen, which would be fun to get certification tracks as well. You can get certified in IT Glue and other products. So there's actually also a book signing with Guy Kawasaki. So make sure you book in now, because we only have limited spots for that. So lots of good reasons to go to the website. If you haven't already, please go there, sign up, and we look forward to seeing you in Phoenix.
Alrighty.
So today's agenda, is there anything else we need to cover before I jump in, Harry, or are we in good shape?
No, I was just going to say, I actually have not seen Guy speak before, certainly know of his reputation over many years. So sir, I will be there.
Awesome. Yeah, no, he's a great speaker. I've not been in the same room as him, but I've certainly seen a lot of online stuff, and recommend his podcast as well. He's got a really interesting podcast right now going where he just interviews very interesting people. Yeah, jump on there. We'll recommend it. Cool. So let me take a quick sip of water so we get prepared here. Today, what we want to talk about is documentation, which is, as I say, my chosen specialized subject. Starting off by looking at how does documentation sit in your other systems that you use to run your organization. And I'm speaking specifically to managed service providers today. You may be coming to us from a smaller managed service provider company. You may potentially be coming to us as an internal IT person, but we kind of, IT Glue works in all those spaces. You'll hear me talk about the MSP a little bit. I hope that rings true with you. Certainly the IT documentation space is something that's relevant to many of us. We're going to talk a little bit about what does a mature documentation solution look like, documentation maturity, and are we designing it, and are we building a good culture around it? I want to show you a little bit of documentation action. I'm going to show you a little scenario play out within IT Glue and how good documentation can work together to really do something that will resonate with you. And talk a little bit about checklists and workflows and SOPs and how those kind of things work with your tech team. And then just a brief thought about, it's not just for those that are technical in our businesses, but actually there's ways that documentation really supports all business units and those that are outside the tech space as well. So that's the agenda for today. Yeah,
Tom, if you don't mind, I'm going to go off camera. I want to make sure we have, I just got a note from the radio control room with all the online stuff. I want to make sure we have sufficient bandwidth. Forgive me. Please stay on camera yourself. Thank you, sir.
Okay, no worries. And if I need to go off camera, that's no problem as well. It would be a shame for you all because I know I'm looking super good today, but all right. Apparently not a problem with humility today. Here's a picture which I love to show because it's really where we're trying to perhaps get away from. Now you'll see by the state of that IBM keyboard that we're looking at a rather old picture here. But maybe some of us feel a little bit in this kind of vibe even today. It's just a little bit of chaos, a little bit of things all over the place. Maybe your digital desktop looks like this guy's physical desktop. We've got a lot more digital these days. If you feel a little bit like this sometimes, where just the world is spinning, and I'm sure even this week particularly, MSPs are really facing new challenges with their clients trying to get into sort of the work from home mode and the working remote mode. It's send us all a little bit into chaos. If you're feeling a little chaotic right now, you're in the right place just to pause, consider, think a little bit about where we're at, and look at how documentation and process can really help bring some order into the chaos and some calm into the craziness. So that's the problem we're trying to solve with a product like IT Glue. We're getting it so you're not all over the place and chaotic, but at least a little bit more calm, a little bit more peaceful, and hopefully an awful lot more efficient and productive. So I want to start by looking at integrated systems. Now, we talk a lot about this in IT. You are probably always having these conversations internally with your team that you work with. And I've put up a quick representation of what perhaps a typical tech stack might look like for a managed service provider. Now, I realize there are things that you might put in other boxes around this above and beyond that. I've simplified a little bit, but let's consider you're using a remote management monitoring tool. You're using a backup disaster recovery tool, using a PSA, a professional services automation tool like a ConnectWise or an Autotask. You are using various protection pieces of hardware and software. So you've got your firewalls, you've got your antivirus, your anti-malware, and things like that. Anti-spam, of course. Networking, obviously the cabling, the switches, the hubs, the routers, the firewalls, everything you're using to keep your client environments up and running. And likely you're doing some kind of hosted data center for your clients as well. You're going to have some stuff, either private cloud or public cloud stuff that you're managing on their behalf. The devices, of course, the computers, the mobile devices that people are using, and any cloud services, software applications. So there's a representation of the tech stack. I'm not telling you anything you don't already live with every day. The question is, where does the IT documentation fit into this picture? And I'm going to slightly arrogantly put it right in the middle today to make the point. It is one of the aspects of your business and of your tech stack. And if I put it in the center here, the ideal world is that it's not separated, but we have a sense of bringing these things together and then linking them into a documentation platform that really works for you. A solution that is much more cohesive and joining in with this information. So if, for example, we can bring in some information about those devices and the networking devices that you have out that you're managing for your clients and bring them right into the documentation, we can connect them to places and contexts and solutions that we perhaps couldn't if they were separated. If your RMM tool, again, is bringing in those devices, your PSA is bringing in your organization, your contacts, your other ticketing information even into the documentation environment. Perhaps you've got some feeds from your backup systems and your antivirus systems that are right next to your documentation. So it's rather than being separated, it's actually brought in and integrated. And that is something that IT Glue does really well. We actually have connections into a lot of other tools. So rather than exporting a bunch of information from one system into another and having your text go between systems an awful lot, let's at least get some of that core information into one central place to get some real efficiency and some workflow and some context into all of that information. That's sure, on a particular job, you're going to be diving into these tools all the time. You're going to be jumping into your RMM and start remote managing and things like that. You're going to be jumping into your cloud service providers website, web console and making changes in there to fix things and to monitor things and to update them. But if we got links from some of those key information into an IT documentation platform, it's going to be that central hub of information. We call ourselves IT Glue because we're gluing things together. And as you consider what you're currently using, if you're not using something like an IT Glue, probably the connections with those systems right now is very minimal, if at all, in place. And a lot of those connections may be quite well outdated. So the power of integrated systems, I couldn't say it better than what was said last year on the CASEA benchmark survey. As part of CASEA, IT Glue is one of a number of integrated systems that work together. And so, of course, we were asking the question last year, what percentage, how many of you think that integrated systems are important to deliver your system? And here it is, 92% of the high-performing MSPs believe that integration of core MSP applications can help them drive better bottom line profits. It's as simple as that. If we've got the space between all of these different systems, it becomes much less and they're all working together and they're integrating. Of course, that's going to give you a better experience. That benchmark survey you can actually download if you go to casea.com/resource and do a search, or that link down bottom left. You'd be welcome to go and have a look at it. So I kind of hinted at it, what does it look like before IT Glue? And perhaps a question, where do you store your documentation today? For many of us, that would be in a bunch of Word documents and spreadsheets sitting on a shared folder, in a SharePoint environment, perhaps, where you've at least got them connected together and collaborated on. You may have some kind of web version of a wiki kind of environment, something like a Confluence, where you've got a bunch of web pages as your documentation platform. Perhaps you're using OneNote. OneNote works super well. It's got lots of great functionality within it, and it's very collaborative, but can get a little messy and chaotic for sure. And maybe that scary icon on the right there, where we don't even have any documentation at all. And I know some of you on the phone are thinking, well, it's just me and a buddy doing IT support around. Well, for sure, you can probably get away without an awful lot of documentation at the moment, because you can kind of run things the way you always did, and you do store a lot of information in your head. But I would challenge you, firstly, that does not scale at all. Once you get beyond 2 people, you cannot keep everything in your head. I guarantee it. But also, you're missing out an awful lot of efficiency potential by having a lot of standardized stuff in one place that you're, even as the 1 or 2 of you, you can go back to documentation and use it really well to be much more efficient and effective going forward. So where are we storing it today? A bunch of different areas. And one of the things you're going to see as you're working in these areas is that if you've got shared folders full of documents, and believe me, I've worked in those environments many times in the last 20 years, you're going to see a lot of documentation you don't necessarily trust. It's going to be out of date. There's going to be duplicates, and you don't know which one's the truth and which one's up to date. There's going to be just a sprawl of documentation over various places where you're looking in several different places to try and find the information you want. So there's duplication, out of date, sprawl. These are all the reasons why spending some time designing a really good internal documentation solution is going to help your business and in essence drive the bottom line, like we said. So that's why we exist. That's what we're talking about today. So to sort of take that into a very summarized way, what are the 3 ways that we would identify documentation can really help your everyday and help your business and help your team? Number 1, it makes your team more powerful. It increases efficiency and accuracy. And I've kind of hinted at that already just by talking about the things that we're struggling with our current solutions. But if we can get something that's consistent, that you always know where you're looking for information, it's linked to the places you want to find it, and you know it's always up to date and collaborated on, that is going to make your team a more powerful team. Straightforward. It's going to make your clients happier. This is a big one for me. I've always worked in IT environments, and I get it. We all join IT because we think we're the heroes, and we love to go in and just have no information and fight fires. That's kind of probably why a lot of us got, especially into the support side of IT. But in essence, if you're always kind of working from gut, or you're working from your instincts, or you're working from the information in your head, you're going to make a different experience each time. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be wasting a lot of time in reinventing things. And one of the things that clients love is when you do something well, you do it efficiently, and you do it consistently. And if they have a problem one month and they talk to one person to fix it, and it works in one way, and then a month later they have a very similar problem and they have a different person and they fix it in a very different way and it's perhaps less efficient, that is not a way to make a client happy. If you've got a great central documentation platform where you're consistently delivering the same service, accurate service, and it doesn't matter who you get on the phone, you're going to get the same experience, that's obviously something we're driving towards in IT support. And that's, again, a really key part. And in the end, like we said, it drives the bottom line, makes more money. If you've got good, efficient documentation, you are going to waste an awful lot less time looking for things. And there's been plenty of studies done on this, and the amount of waste, particularly in knowledge worker kind of environments, can be anywhere up to 40, 50, 60% of the time just looking for the information to do jobs, which is ridiculous and crazy. Certainly, we have I didn't put it in this deck, the slide, but we have a study that was done by the upper echelons of Microsoft, and they were saying 20% of the time, on average, is spent simply looking for information to do the job. So as soon as we can get something that's central documentation, we're going to actually be able to drive efficiency and make sure there's a lot less of that time wasted, and therefore, in the end, lower costs, increase revenue. And for those of you, who are working in the tech side of things, this enables you to then get on and do much more of the creative work you've been wanting to do for a long time. And ultimately, documentation builds trust. Here's a great little quote we got from a salesperson in an MSP, a business development guy in an MSP environment. And this was his take on documentation. Documentation gives me the transparency that nobody else has. I can pull up the data to show a prospect our track record of hitting SLAs. I can show them how we record their information and explain why this improves the service they receive. So imagine going into a prospective client's information saying, this is the kind of stuff you're going to get when you work with us. So rather than phoning a guy in his basement and hoping they're going to come out and fix your problem or fix it over the phone, and you don't really know what's going on, let me show you the kind of documentation we have on some of our other clients. Let me show you the way that we hit ticket SLAs. Let me show you these things in documentation. And that can be a really, really great sales tool. So I've got a friend, David, who's taught me a great deal about organizational culture and what it means to succeed in an organization. And one phrase that you will always hear if you go for coffee with David is, are you doing something by default or are you doing it by design? Are you just kind of falling into the way things are, or are you actually taking some time to create and design and think about the best way to do it? And so we want to talk about if you're looking at whatever documentation solution you're currently using, and look at something that it could be available for you, like an IT glue. Is this actually by default or by design? So when I say by default, you're kind of you're going to really the lowest common denominator. We need to get this stuff done because we kind of have to, and we're going to find a solution that just works in the moment. And we're just going to kind of develop habits and develop things that we do, but it's really just happening over time by default. And what you want to be thinking is, okay, what is the most efficient way to store information and present information in a way that is actually designed to get the best out of our people, get the best out of our processes, and get the best out of our business. And so highlighting a few aspects of IT Glue and the way we've designed a product for you, these are the kind of things that we have that really hits that. So we talked about consistency and consistent procedures. Make sure you've got SOPs. I'm sure you all use SOPs and checklists at some level, but let's make that absolutely central and core and required for everything you do. You need something that's got a lot of user activity tracking. Who's doing what, where, when? Who's checking on which password? Who's updating which document? Who's accessing certain things? If we're changing stuff on the fly, do we have a revision history? Do we have permissions as to who can see what and who can edit what? Those kind of things are very much part of the design of a good documentation platform. Process management. When you look at the structure of how we store information, we've got these things called flexible assets that you can design and create, very standard kind of SQL database design. So you can actually kind of get the fields that you want, the standardization you want in the information you're storing. Workflows and alerting, if things are changing or things are needing to be changed, do you have some workflows and alerts that kind of spin that up in the documentation world? Are you flagging things up as to whether they are in need of some information, or flagging them as, yes, this has gone through a process of sign off by change control, that kind of thing. And of course, password management, a very key part of any documentation platform. Do you have something that is got all of those things that you'd expect in terms of security and auditing and encryption and how they're stored, and permissions to be able to get to them, all those kind of basic things you'd expect about a password manager. But also with something like IT Glue, do you find those passwords where you want to find them? So can you find that password linked directly to the document that you're running that needs that password to run it? We've got various ways of getting to that, including a Chrome extension and a mobile app as part of IT Glue. So I've talked a lot about the why of IT Glue, the why of a documentation platform, the why it's going to help your business become more profitable and more effective. Let's look at a thing that we call documentation maturity. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the operational maturity model. Vern Harnish, if you haven't read his stuff, you must definitely get a hold of it. Thinking about your operational maturity as a company. You basically rank yourself on a 1 to 5. Well, we were thinking about this early on in our time, and thinking, well, what does maturity in documentation look like specifically? So this is an opportunity, if you're on the webinar today, to just even think, okay, where am I at on this kind of scale? What does my documentation platform look like today? And rate yourself a little bit. So when we look at a low maturity.
Tom, do you mind if I occasionally interject, my good friend?
Go for it.
Yeah, you've hit on an important topic we're covering in a different realm. We have a lecture series called the Pocket MBA for MSPs, and we've talked about maturity. And and so this slide is very applicable. So I would just like to contribute that the E-Myth, it was the E-Myth Revisited, the E-Myth book is also speaking towards maturity levels and working, on the business, not every day. And you know all this, but that's another resource that's right in this conversation zone. I'll go back on mute.
Hey, no, thank you so much, Harry, for interjecting, because one of the things, of course, with doing these webinars, you never quite know the audience you're working with or the ones you're doing. So anytime, please feel free to jump in. You're welcome to do so. And obviously, this is one aspect of that business maturity. What are our processes and our documentation looking like? And you can see the standards there. If you're looking at a low maturity environment, it is that chaos thing. That black and white picture we had at the beginning of that guy, and just like, what am I doing? Where am I at? We're just minimal amounts of documentation. What we have is potentially out of date, and nobody's really using it, even if it is there. That's kind of the baseline. That's the 1.0 or the 2.0 of maturity for sure. The medium maturity is probably where many of us would sit in much of our IT careers, either at the lower end or the higher end, depending on really where you're at. You know, you've got some documentation, but it's probably incomplete. There is that sprawl I mentioned earlier where you're looking in different places to try and find the truth. You're going to find some duplication and some things that need work. But and really, we say limited strategic value there. You know, we recognize that documentation is a need to have. I always say that IT guys, saying that IT guys love documentation, we have that tagline, we love documentation. Saying IT guys love documentation is like saying a New York police officer loves paperwork. It's just that thing we have to do, isn't it? And so when you're at a medium maturity level, you've got the documentation because you kind of have to have it, but it's really the last thing you want to be doing, and it's not very strategic for you. And of course, if you go to the right, we're looking at something that I've been hinting at already, and hopefully something I'm going to demonstrate a little bit in a minute, where you've got something that's much more high maturity. It's a core part of what you're doing. You're getting the value from it. You are building the efficiency into your team, and even a culture of documentation. So it's an opportunity for us to pause and just think, okay, I know I need it. I know that I do document. I know that we've got stuff, but where am I at on this scale? And if you need a little help, we've actually got a little questionnaire you can do just to help you, rate yourself. Just go to itlu.com/DML to sort of give you an opportunity to reflect and consider and think, okay, is this something I really need to be spending some time working on right now? Cool. So documentation maturity. Just a few thoughts on how you might improve that maturity, making the massive assumption that we've all got some work to do. I know that every organization, including the one I'm currently in, we certainly always have work to do on our documentation, and improve that maturity. Here's a few just thoughts again, like how can we practically hone in on some of the areas of the business that we need to look at and consider how to include them. Do we have clear requirements and standardized project templates for all the work we do? Or are we just going in and upgrading infrastructure kind of without really clearly documenting our projects? Are you requiring a certain level of documentation when you bring on a new client onto the business? I remember this very vividly when I began with a certain MSP, and we pretty much take on any company. I actually remember asking early on, how do we turn away business? And the answer, I'm sorry to say at the time, was we really don't. Now, within a couple of years, there was a massive transformation in that organization. I'm very happy to say that we got to a point where we were absolutely turning away business for all the right reasons. And it was actually the beginning of that process that I was in unwittingly. But one of those maturity pieces, are we requiring documentation when onboarding clients? So are we getting people to a certain level, or are we just saying, hey, we're your new IT guys, let's go? Number three, when we're onboarding documents, are we actually when we're onboarding a client and the documentation assigned with that, are we QAing it as we go? Are we actually getting people to check it and ensure that it's complete? Do you have a solution to go through where you've sort of gone out of the onboarding phase into full live service agreement work? Is there a sign-off point? Is there a point where the client agrees that we've done everything we need to, that the service desk is happy to take this on? I'm talking slightly bigger teams perhaps here, but are we ready to go? Do we have what we need to do our work before we can say, okay, we're now in go live status? That's a good sign of maturity if you're doing that. And if you're just kind of saying day one, sign contract, we're now your IT support guys and we're off, and there's no sense of QAing and process around that, that's probably a sign of a lower maturity. Number four, are you encouraging clients to help actually collaborate and create documentation with you? It's not just an IT job, it's a business job, right? And there are certain things that are going to be collaborated on and worked on with the client. There's a great, again, a sort of a pause reflection moment. Are our clients helping us create documentation, or are we having to just kind of really beat our heads against brick walls all the time on this stuff? And then a quick mention of automation and optimization, number 5 there at the bottom. Is there ways of connecting technology together to bring in information and automate stuff so that you're not kind of repeating documentation in certain places? Are there ways that things are being kept up to date? So here's some areas to pick out. Again, not comprehensive, but a few ideas. Wanted to be a bit more practical to think, well, where am I actually at on my onboarding? Where am I actually at on this automation and collection piece? And then we take it to the ultimate level, and this is a conversation I've had quite a bit over the 5 years of IT Glue with customers and with clients who are really trying to instill some of these wonderful things that I'm talking about in their teams. You know, quite often we'll work with someone in let's say an MSP of a team of 15, and they totally see the need for it. They've totally understood where they're at and where they need to be, and they've seen that, you know, IT Glue is the way to get there, and they've seen that a structured documentation platform is going to get to that place, and they go gung-ho with it, and they're all over just designing it and creating it and putting it all in. But then what about the rest of the team? What about the other 14 of us? We seem to not really be getting the same passion, and I'm sure that as I say that, some of you are thinking of that one person in your team who's just super great with documentation and does such a great job, but the rest of us just don't quite get it. So just again, consider, you know, what are the ways to actually help encourage a documentation culture. And there's an awful lot to this, and I'm not going to be able to do it justice in one simple slide here. But again, it's an opportunity for us today to pause and reflect and think. You know, is documentation actually written right within the role description of what your people do? Is this an expected part of what an IT person does? Or is it that kind of unwritten thing in the background that no one really likes doing? Are you actually encouraging it with specific KPIs? I've been in an environment like this. I've been in a service desk environment where documentation was part of monthly and quarterly reviews. How many documents have you created? How many have you updated? And if you've got a system that can track that stuff, that can be really, really handy to actually make it specific. Just in KPIs, you can also kind of have some particular goals as a team within a month or a quarter to just say, we're going to hit documentation and getting it up to speed in these areas and these areas and these areas. What are the things you're actually measuring, and putting a little competition in there, a little encouragement, a little reward system, if you like, to help build that culture. Because we all know that the other side of building documentation, a lot of people are a lot happier, but getting to that point is the thing that can be a struggler. I've already talked about employee reviews just there. And in the end, I mean, I don't think anyone's ever been fired for not documenting, but well, maybe they have. But it is really a sense of, are you in? Are you with us? Is this part of who you are? Or is this something that you're just really butting up against? And this is actually an area where we need to think, are you in the team or are you out? At whatever level that is. So just, you know, to consider documentation culture in the team. Just one little practical note on that. As I've worked with people and worked in IT support environments over many years, I always find that there is no one way to motivate someone to document. And I think it can be it's obviously a personality thing, and there are some people who love to do it and some people who hate it. But beyond that, I think there's very much a role aspect to it. And one thing to really recognize is, what is that role's motivation for getting great documentation? You know, what your tier 1 help desk person is going to have a very different motivation to your project person. Is going to have a different motivation to your tier 3 networking specialist. And there's lots of things in there. So where you're finding it a struggle to build that sort of sense of we're all documenting together and this is for the greater good, literally taking people or teams one-on-one and working out what their motivations are, I think is a very important part of that thing, and recognizing it's not the same for everybody. So I just realized I've introduced a whole webinar topic there, but I'm gonna move on. But I hope that was a helpful takeaway for some of you. All right, we're going to see IT Glue in action in just a second, and before we do, I just wanted to mention one of my chosen specialized subjects, and it was right there in the synopsis for the webinar, so I know you knew it was coming, all of you. Just wanted to mention really checklists, and we're actually going to see a checklist in action in a second. They are just, I use checklists all the time in my personal life and my work life. As soon as you're repeating something, as soon as you have to do something with a series of steps, then checklists can just be really, really powerful things. If you want to go to the ultimate, there's a whole book called The Checklist Manifesto. It's about 10 years old now. Really recommend having a look at that if you're into list making at all or process at all. But the power of checklists really breathes into what I was mentioning earlier about the consistency of process. So if you know that things are being followed in a similar way each time, there is a consistency there that is going to create that better client experience, and is going to help you create consistent work as you go forward. That's really important. Now, I recognize that not everything in IT is like we said earlier, we're used to working in the unknown. We're used to working in crisis mode and fixing things that really don't have a pattern. I get that, you know, there are things that you're always going to have to do something for the first time somewhere, but there is an awful lot more consistency in what you do than you perhaps realize. I'm going to give you one little example. I remember where we had a problem in the MSP environment where we just had a lot of disks would run out of space on various servers, whether it be app servers with too many folders or whatever. Disk space would run out. Now you think that every time you want to create disk space or address that issue in an environment, whether it's, you know, you need to expand disks or buy new ones or just delete stuff to create space, whatever the solution is, you know, you'd have thought that it's different in every single circumstance, because depending on what the server does and what the operating system is and how you're using it and all that stuff, it could be a very, very different experience. We noticed in our MSP that actually there's a lot of very key repeatable things that you would do each time to just check space on a Windows server, you know. And so we'd write an SOP with a checklist saying, I've been through this, and this, haven't created enough space, we now need to go on to the next level. A lot of consistency. So rather than someone every time going in and sort of doing their own thing, potentially missing some key things that they could have done, potentially making some wrong decisions because they're going to step 5 before they did step 2, all those sort of things. And something as simple as releasing disk space from an environment, consistency is key. And the power of checklists I saw in action there. It was a really great example of team working well together to do something that no one really enjoys. It's not a fun job, but let's go through the motions, go through the checklist. Checklists are very trackable. You know where you're at on it. We've done this, this, and this. We've got this to go. Super simple. If you're doing it in your head or you're doing it off just a document without any checks, it's not trackable. Efficiency. I seem to have mentioned that word a few times today. Of course, you can get quick with checklists. It's like boom, 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 done, rather than having to think and design and Google and whatever. If you've got a checklist that you're running, it can be very efficient. And I don't have to think. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Getting Things Done by David Allen. I am a huge super fan of that book and that methodology. Go to gettingthingsdone.com and you'll see what I'm talking about. One of the things that David often says is the right number of times to think about something is once. Now, he uses that in a particular way, but I think checklists are a really good example of that. In essence, wouldn't it be nice to be able to actually achieve a bunch of things without having to really think about it too much? If you have a checklist where you're going step, 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 you've already thought, or somebody somewhere when they designed that checklist has already done all the thinking. You're just now putting it into action. Now, if your whole life was like that, I get it would be totally boring. But there are some things where running a checklist and not having to think about something can actually be very helpful for your own stress levels, can be helpful for the efficiency. And honestly, for those of us that are a little bit lazy, secret, if you don't have to think about something, why bother? It's a good aspect of great documentation, great process, great efficiency. If you don't have to think about doing something, you just do it. That's actually really good. And again, depending on your motivation. So the power of checklists. Let's look at one in action. I want to just jump into IT Glue and see it. Now, I've got one eye on the question panel. I'm not seeing any questions come in at this point, I don't think, either that or they've all been answered in the background, so I hope so. Just want to encourage you, please feel free to throw some questions in as you go, and we'll have some time at that at the end.
Tom, why you take a sip of water, Tom? That's exactly right. Folks, if you joined our webinar late, we're having a fantastic business conversation on documentation, business maturity, and so on. I do see one, Tom, what's your pleasure? I do see one question. Would you like to take that question now or later?
Yeah, go for it, because this is a sort of natural point to yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah, okay, so a gentleman named Zen, boy, I love that first name, Zen. The statement is, I am interested in seeing how you capture information and how it is secured so that only authorized persons have access to it. Cybersecurity is a huge concern. So having great documentation is important, but it has to be secure as well. Will we see this today?
Actually, not directly. I'm not going to demo that today. Very easy to sign up for a demo of how IT Glue strikes that balance between I might be able to show you quickly as we do this that I'm literally going to demo a particular sort of scenario in IT Glue in a second. I could actually pop there and just show you a little bit about the security side, but I think really at a broad level, whatever solution you're using, I think the idea of being able to sort of compartmentalize your information and documentation is very important. I'm definitely one of those guys that comes from the angle of the default is that everybody has access and everybody edits. Now, I realize that's not right for everything in a business specifically, but in an IT support perspective, as much as possible, I'm a huge believer in collaboration and sort of trusting your team to all work together to get to the best results. I realize that is not, that is not a great idea in every respect. So certainly from an IT Glue perspective, and I think from most documentation platforms that you're going to want to use, there are some things you're going to make very secret and hidden, and some things are going to be very available. I guess let's take an obvious example. You're talking about cybersecurity. Password management is obviously a huge part of cybersecurity. Do we have a lot of shared passwords that are being used within an MSP environment? Absolutely. All these guys that come in and sort of say, oh, you should never have a shared password. Everyone has to have an individual credential to access systems. It's like, well, it's a great theory, and sure, there's possibilities of that happening in some areas, but the reality is we know that in the MSP world, you have a lot of joint admin passwords that people are using. You have shared passwords to get to certain things, and frankly, there are some IT systems that you have to work that way. There is no way of making it individual. So when it comes to password management, you definitely want to be able to think, okay, who can get access to certain credentials and be able to see who's accessed it when as well is really important. So certainly in something like an IT Glue, you have that kind of thing where if a password, let's say there's a password for a firewall on a key client site, you really only want your senior techs to be able to access, very obvious one. You can definitely set that very, very straightforwardly in something like an IT Glue to basically say only the techs can see it, and if you're not, if you don't have access to that password, you can't search for it, you can't find it. There's ways of sort of people knowing it's there, but you definitely can't access it. So every aspect of IT Glue is securable. So you could secure things away so they're invisible. And you can certainly sort of have whole sections of information that you can secure away that other people can't see. Great example in the MSP world is that you don't want all of your techs to be able to access all of your internal IT information and play around in your own environment. You're going to have a few people that are very specifically IT people within your own building and your own software and your own structure. You very easily can make a little organization as part of an IT Glue or something like that, where only the people that you give access to would have access to that thing, and then everything within it you can even then secure down further. So
and Tom,
little long there.
Yeah, Jessica actually echoes that. Jessica says security groups is how we handle permissions and privileges in IT Glue. Yep. So, okay, my friend, please continue. That was the main question.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, let's have a look at a documentation solution in action. And in order to show you a little bit of a real life scenario here, I want to introduce you to 3 totally fictitious people. If you know any of these people, let me know offline, because I need to change their pictures, because they're definitely made up. I made them up myself. Ben on the left there is a project manager for our MSP called Krakentex. So he is responsible for a lot of the IT stuff for his clients in the MSP. Deanna is someone who's going to be actually rolling out a computer to someone in a second. She's actually at the client site, and the client is called Happy Frog. And so on the right, we have the IT manager of Happy Frog, a guy called Derek, who is involved in this story as well. So the 2 guys on the left, Ben and Deanna, are both working for an MSP, and Derek is kind of their client, but he's an IT manager of the client, so he collaborates a lot with them, and they work together. And the scenario I wanted to put together today was, imagine something where for Happy Frog, the CFO has just joined the company today. This is day 1, and it's Deanna's job to take her the new workstation for Jeremy to, Jeremy is the new CFO. Deanna is at his desk right now, basically setting up his new computer, making sure everything's working for him, and delivering it. And Derek gets a call from the new CFO, Jeremy, saying, I'm not happy, this isn't going the way I expected, something's going on, we've not got any, in this case, Sage software is not installed on the workstation, I need this, I've got to get a report to the CEO by this afternoon, this is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've never been in that scenario because you guys deliver products that are perfect and they come exactly the way expected. But you can imagine the scene. Upset CFO, tech at the desk, what happens next? Derek gets the call. So, and we're going to use various aspects of IT Glue here to see how this plays out. So I'm going to flip across here to, actually, this is looking at Ben's screen. So this is IT Glue here. Just double check, Harry, we can see that okay? You can see my IT Glue screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I
Perfect.
see that. Just
thank you. Because without you being able to see it, I just want to double check the tech was working fine from here. Excellent, excellent. So this is actually Ben's view of a checklist in IT Glue. Now I'm not going to do a full demonstration of IT Glue today. There's stuff on here that if you've not used it before, will be very new to you. Those of you that are using it, like Jessica, hi, you'll be very familiar with this kind of environment. But maybe you don't use checklists in this way. So here's a thought. So Ben has already seen the checklist is in action here. And we got a bunch of things that have already been checked off and done. Anything that's kind of grayed out here is already completed. Derek actually did complete this job yesterday, but he just hasn't checked it off yet. That happens on checklists. But here's a bunch of typical things that we would do. So Jeremy Steele, the CFO, has called Derek. Derek himself, the first thing he does is actually call up the checklist on his computer. He's using a thing called MyGlue, which is attached to IT Glue. So this is the way we collaborate with Derek, and he's looking at exactly the same information that Ben is. So he can see that, oh, look, I didn't do that task. I should check that off because I actually did that yesterday. So he does that on the fly. And he noticed that down here, why is it there? Oh my goodness. I tell you what, if I refresh my screen, that's going to disappear. In my preparation, there was supposed to be no Sage Accounting at the bottom, but you might not have noticed that. I actually ran a checklist before running this checklist, but here we go. So Derek goes down the bottom and discovers that at the bottom there is no task here to install Sage Accounting, which is not great news because it should always have been there. So he's going to quickly flip that on there as a task and say install Sage Accounting. And actually he reaches out to Ben because he's not sure what the procedure is for doing that. He just knows it needs doing and IT needs to take care of it. So so Derek has just kind of put that extra thing on the checklist. Ben is the other end. He refreshes his screen. So rather than this taking an awful lot of time, he's just going to very quickly put in the document that we need. So he knows that there is an install document for Sage Accounting, and he's going to just start typing that in here. I'm sure it should just come up. There we go. Sage Accounting, install desktop client. That's the SOP that's been previously written, and he's going to assign that to Deanna because Deanna's sitting at the desk to do the work right now. There we go. And so we already know that all of these things have been achieved on the computer. We know that Deanna's at the desk right now. She's literally doing this step right now, delivering workstation to Jeremy, and she's going to walk him through his passwords and do those kind of job. We know exactly what's been done and what hasn't, and this has saved a ton of time and hopefully again increase that client experience right now. We're all working from the same documentation. We know what's happened. We know where we're looking. It's all actually in line with some other documentation here. So when Ben actually created this link to a document right there, it's literally right in line with the checklist, and he's going to open that in a new tab here. And it's got a very basic SOP install doc for Sage Accounting. It's been done before, sitting in a certain place. It's all linked together. And Deanna will go off and do the job. Jeremy's actually quite impressed that they managed to get done that quickly and without too much hoo-ha. So across to the right, you'll see that actually the way this checklist sits in context for everything else, we can see that it's assigned, that it's related to Jackie Till. So we happen to know that Jackie is actually the hiring manager for Jeremy. So that's why there's a connection there to their contact information. And this has probably come through in this case from a PSA tool. So we're not creating that information in here, but it's good to have that related right to the checklist. The document that we just created, the link to the document there is now related over here as well. So there's an SOP related to the checklist. I've now not done that in a new tab. I'm going to go back. What else do we have? We can actually see the workstation initially was deployed for an image, and there was an SOP about that as well. So I'm going to click on that and hope that I wrote something in it, but it may be a blank document. Let's see. There we go. Very basic. This is how to create something from an image on the workbench in the office. So what we're seeing here, and the location, and even Jeremy's new password, which is going to be deleted as part of this process, because once the AD password has been changed, we're going to delete that off. So what we're seeing here is a really basic checklist. We're seeing a checklist that's being collaborated on, that doesn't involve a lot of, did you do this, did you do that, did you do the other? It's like, yeah, we know you've checked all the steps, and we know you've got to this point, and we can very quickly introduce other aspects to it that very quickly, install Sage, check it off, Jeremy's happy, we've done the password thing, and Deanna's off, and then create a good experience. So I wanted to show this as an example just because it's very real world. We've all been there before. I don't know if you've been the Ben, the Derek, or the Deanna in this. Maybe you've been all three. I think I've probably been all three in this story at some point in my career. But this is a way where the maturity of a documentation platform can really be seen. If Deanna was basically working with information she didn't know, it would be really hard for her to create a good client experience for Jeremy. If Derek didn't know that we had a great IT documentation platform, he would be sort of yelling at Ben, the project manager, in the background saying, what the heck, this is my most important hire of this year, how dare you screw it up, blah, 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 blah. None of that is happening. This is a sense of, yeah, we made a mistake, we can own the mistake. Ben is now going to go off and make sure that there are certain things added to the checklist for future and things like that. But it's because we're collaborating together, we know it's well documented, we know the things are there, it becomes a very easy situation to work with. Now, I realize that little story there has probably piled up a bunch of questions for those of you who've never seen IT Glue before about what's going on here. You can probably look at this left menu and go, what are all these things? And some of them you'll recognize easily and some of them not so much. You're very welcome, if you've not seen IT Glue before, to at the end of this to get a full demo to see a lot more of what's going on here. But I hope that was helpful just to see something of what we were talking about earlier being in action, where have we got a solution where we can have a checklist that's in with SOPs, within passwords, within contacts, and all those other relationships within a platform that is fairly mature, that is allowing us to work well together and efficiently together, create great client experience, really trying to pull all that business idea earlier on that I was talking about as the why of documentation into a situation where if you're getting to this point, you are in a good maturity state that's working really well for your business. So that was kind of the purpose of this little story there. Hope that's helpful. Whereas we're getting towards the top of the hour here, I know that's going to spun up a bunch of questions about the platform. We mentioned security. I did say I'd have a quick look at that. Every single asset within IT Glue has a security thing where we can say this particular checklist is assigned to 3 groups, and I can see that senior techs, internal IT, and demo in this particular case can see it. My Glue is a separate part of IT Glue. I realize I'm introducing a new concept to people there, but this is really a client-facing collaboration tool part of IT Glue. So Derek himself is looking at My Glue here, and he's seeing a very cut-down version of IT Glue. And again, he can see who has access to that particular checklist in that way as well. Right, I have introduced a bunch of concepts. There's one other little topic I had, but I realized we're nearly at the top of the hour. I want to get opportunities for questions, and then I'll do a quick final shout out to that final topic. And I think we are good to go. Where are we at? Now, either I'm not seeing the questions, Harry, because you're hiding them from me, or you're very carefully fielding elsewhere, or maybe we don't have any.
I have, yeah, it's hard to wear all the hats in an online conference environment. So
this is where team is great, and I really appreciate working team with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're probably not going to get to all the questions. So Tom,
Absolutely.
I'll look to maybe take a couple offline, and a couple are more
sure. Happy to do that.
Specific, that let me do some picking and shoot. We have John and Jessica and John, and you know what, I'm gonna work from the bottom up. So John says, do you have a library of checklists that can be shared with your IT Glue partners? Thank you, John.
Not specifically on checklists. We do have a documentation library, which do I have that? Do I have that? One thing to mention on checklists, you can create checklist templates as well. So, for example, deploying a workstation here, this could be very standardized that you can then go and recreate. So you can certainly create your own library and your own templates that you can then roll out to all of your clients. I did want to mention the IT Glue library because it goes towards something. This little feature here.
If you don't mind, while you're clicking, John, he actually speaks towards something related to this. John asks, is there a way to import any existing checklist from other sources? I see an import button in the upper right of your screen.
Oh, we can definitely import documents, which is what that is. We can import parses. We can import an awful lot of things. But I am sorry to say, I'm pretty sure we can't import checklists themselves.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, good question. I'll be totally open and frank with you right now. I would say checklist within IT Glue is a little bit of a version 1 product, something that I've been super passionate about since the word go. As you can tell from what I've been talking about today, you can assign different tasks to people. You can do the security thing. You can link things. But in terms of importing, exporting, or getting a lot of automation around checklists, that work is yet to be done. We've got lots of stuff we'd love to do with them, but I've got to say it's definitely a very simple, and part of the joy of it is its simplicity, to be honest. It's a very simple checklisting system. If you're using a PSA tool, you may do checklists and project plans and stuff in there that's way more complex than what we have in IT Glue. And that has pros and cons. Sometimes that's right for some things, but sometimes you just want something really simple, and that's what we have here. So no importing that I'm aware of.
Yeah, fair enough. Always a roadmap in software. Jessica asked a question in the same realm. Jessica says, do the checklists sync into Kaseya BMS platforms?
They do not. Same answer. At one point, I would personally absolutely love that, but at this point, it's very much an island in itself. And I think for those that are using a PSA tool, if you're using checklisting really well in your PSA and you're using kind of work orders and things like that, please keep using it. That's a way more powerful place to use checklisting in many ways. What I would say is that some things apply really well in a PSA environment, some things within an IT Glue environment, and you can actually use both alongside each other. I know that kind of goes against what I was saying about documentation sprawl. It's like, where am I looking for this checklist? But from my perspective, I think there are some things that work really well in a PS environment, but some things work really well in IT Glue. And this particular one that I have highlighted here, I think the ticket is still going to exist. Like in this case, we have a ticket in a PSA system that is linked to this this checklist, and in the ticket, I would expect to see this URL here, the actual IT Glue checklist, simply in the ticket, because of course in the ticket the techs are going to put their time against that. I spent, Deanna spent 2 hours at Jeremy's desk doing all the final deployment, whatever. That's obviously going to be assigned to the ticket, but the information itself of the steps that were taken, if that's buried in a ticket in a PSA tool, it's less likely to be linked to other places that are useful in the future. So those are the kind of questions you'll be asking. At this point, there's no direct link between here and a PSA tool. I would personally love that, and at one point, I really hope we'll get there, but it's not on the near future yet. So it's really more about picking your tool for the job required.
Yeah, fair enough. And a shout out to Carlos over in the radio control room. He's taking on some individual questions from John and others. Thank you, Carlos.
Thanks, Carlos. Appreciate it.
Hey, Tom, we're tapping the top of the hour, and our folks, they need to get back to the salt mine. Give it your best shot. I appreciate you joining us today.
Well, really glad to join you guys. Thanks so much for the invitation. I know that I've touched on a bunch of things that are going to spin up a lot more conversation. And you'd be very welcome to engage with our team as you can, both on the support side for those that are customers of ours and the sales side for those that aren't. And it'd be great to spend time. Let me just quickly whiz through as we hit the top of the hour. I was going to talk about how IT Glue works for non-technical teams. I'm going to have to skip through that, but just to say, IT people are not the only people that need process and credentials and tracking and information and stuff like that. So there's definitely a place for that. IT Glue itself uses IT Glue every day, and we're not an MSP. We're not an IT. We're a software company. So quick advert for our next webinar coming up with Nigel next week. Nigel is an awesome guy, has an awful lot of MSP experience as well. I'm sure you know him well, Harry. He's a great guy, full of energy all the time. He'll be joining us next week to talk about MSP marketing, totally different subject. Please feel free to get itglue.com/resources for our upcoming webinar schedule. And I should totally have a slide for you guys as well for this and B, but I don't have one in this. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Where do they go, Harry, to find out your upcoming webinars and things?
Yeah, we'll thank you, Tom. Folks, you'll be receiving a follow-up email from Jennifer Hallmark with some upcoming events, including a 2-day online conference, June 1st and 2nd. Keep an eye on your inbox.
That is awesome. Cool. Well, I think we've hit the top of the hour and we're kind of there. Any last thoughts from you, Harry, before we sign off and let people deal with the craziness that is the global IT world today?
No, yes, I talked, I just had this thought, and we'll call it good, but I had a long conversation with a technology CEO in our space in Austin, Texas yesterday, and he really believes strongly that we're on the cusp of a 3-year opportunity as MSPs have to assist enterprises and other companies in setting up secure home offices, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not just talking buying furniture at IKEA, but he really feels we're on the cusp of a 3-year opportunity. And I see IT glue and documentation clearly as part of that motion because, just because. And I'll make that the final word from SMB Nation. Tom and Carlos and the gang, thank you so much. Jenny in the radio control room, as always. Folks, look for a follow-up email from Jennifer Hallmark and have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.